Salutations, one and all, and welcome to RWBY Revisited. In this installment, let us examine the showdown of Tyrian versus the impromptu Team Ranger and Qrow. As usual, we need to assess both sides' motives before we begin. Tyrian has been sent out by Salem to capture Ruby Rose here, on account of her silver eyes. Likely, she intended to turn her into another hound-like creature, as Tyrion's orders are to capture her, not to eliminate her. Personally, I'd say it would be wiser to simply eradicate all individuals whom possess the silver eyes, but that's just me. However, the other members of their so-called Team Ranger are of no consequence to him or his mission, and as such, they can be disposed of. This brings me to the point of their objective, which is self-defense. Ruby doesn't want to be taken, and Jean, Nora, and Ren don't want her to be taken either, and neither do they desire to be eliminated. Qrow joins the fight as well, and his motivation is similar, that being to protect his niece. So this means that Tyrian has to hold back with Ruby, as his orders are to bring her back, probably as unspoiled as possible. He can go full force on the others, but not her, which should, in theory, give her at least a small edge, as she has no such constraints, though Tyrion's skill does eclipse hers. But with that out of the way, let's get on to the confrontation. So it would seem that Ren can detect a threat approaching, even if it's at a distance. It's interesting that he could, while the others could not, though. While Jean is still quite inept at this point, Ruby and Nora have not been portrayed as such, meaning that they should potentially be able to do this as well. Aura-based abilities have always had some jank to them, especially in earlier seasons.
I sense something, a presence I've not felt since...
So Tyrian makes himself known, leaping well over and past the group before drawing his weapons. Now, Tyrian is a complete psychopath. That much is clear. But this is not how I would have gone about things if I was in his shoes. Remember that the goal is to capture Ruby and bring her to Salem. That's it. He engages in a fight because he's deranged. But a more optimal method of accomplishing this would be to avoid a confrontation if at all possible. Ranger here are roughing it through remote country. Why there isn't a more reliable means of getting from one kingdom to another is beyond me, but this is what we're dealing with. This means that they will need to set up camp. If they're smart, then they'll rotate someone being on watch. If they're dumb, then nobody will be on guard. If it's the former, then quietly taking out that one before disposing of the other two would be optimal. Then you can move on to subduing and restraining Ruby herself. If for some reason that wasn't an option, then utilizing range would be your next best strategy, picking off one or more of the other three while they are not yet aware of your presence. Another problem he'd have to contend with would be Ruby's mobility. She easily has much more than he himself does thanks to her semblance. If Salem knows about Ruby's silver eyes, then it's likely that she knows of her other abilities too. There's also no guarantee that she wouldn't just ditch her friends and run. I mean, we know that she wouldn't do that, but Tyrian has no way to be sure of it. Tyrian moves on Ruby first, but is intercepted by Ren, who does attempt to get control over one of his opponent's weapons, pushing it aside with his own. Granted, there's a bit of a missed opportunity here, as Ren dual wields, meaning that he should strike with his second weapon while simultaneously parrying with the first. He then aims a kick at Tyrian, though the latter blocks it when he has, by and large, evaded it. Ren even fires into Tyrian, though this has no noticeable effect. Tyrian finally responds by striking at Ren, whose posture is extremely poor here. It wouldn't take much to knock him to the ground, standing like this. Ren does manage to shove aside Tyrion's weapon though, as it doesn't appear like the attacker is taking him seriously at all. He evades a kick, but is swiftly sent flying by another attack. Tyrian then moves in on RWBY, though neither Jon nor Nora have made a move yet. It makes some degree of sense that nobody had acted when Ren was engaged, as you don't want to open fire when the enemy is in such close proximity to your friend. However, that is no longer the case. Now would be a great time to jump in. RWBY backpedals, even completely losing grip of her scythe at this point. This is why you don't flourish during a fight. She could very easily have lost her weapon here. She pays for this by eating a kick. Tyrian presses her again, and telegraphs a swing, which RWBY does block with the haft of Crescent Rose, and Tyrian continues to push her. This is the disadvantage of having a weapon as big as Crescent Rose. That size makes it cumbersome and slow. I know RWBY isn't a show that's trying to be realistic, but if you look at real-world weapons through history, they weren't massive. Even something like a Claymore Greatsword wasn't used as often as some would believe, and when it was used more like a polearm than a sword. An odd point to note is that when RWBY blocks an attack from Tyrian, she recoils as if in pain, and her aura flares up. This means one of two things. In the first case, this attack had so much energy behind it, even blocking it transferred force to RWBY, causing her to take damage. The second possibility is that her aura extends to her weapon, which would be a terrible idea. That would just eat up your aura, as when you strike something, you would also damage yourself. That's why your knuckles will be cut up from a fist fight. Some of the force you dish out will be dealt to you as well. Not to mention that this would completely negate the point of blocking with a weapon. If your aura extends to it, then there's little difference between it being struck and just allowing yourself to be hit. That's not something you would ever want.
That sounded terrible.
Jon finally steps up, and I will commend that he led with his shield. Shields are a thing seldom seen on most prominent characters in media, and even when they do use them, they tend to be swung away from their body in a stupid fashion, so that the audience gets a better view of the character. I hate that. The shield exists for a reason. Tyrian then clambers onto the shield, and for some reason, Jon doesn't simply stab his blade forward. Even if it doesn't break Tyrion's aura, it will deal damage, or force him to break off for a moment. Instead, he just stands there doing nothing. Nora then attempts to engage, but Tyrian manages to leap onto her weapon before leaping away.
We're not looking for a fight! Who are you?
Who I am matters not to you. Or you. You do interest me.
Jon tries to be diplomatic, declaring that they don't want a fight. Fair enough, as for all they know, Tyrian could be some crazed hermit living out here in the middle of nowhere, possibly seeing them as invading his land. If that were the case, then perhaps he could be reasoned with. But as we know, that is not in fact the case. Ren, however, demands to know who Tyrian is, which prompts Tyrian to reply that who he is doesn't matter to Ren or Nora, though he pauses to state that Jon does interest him. People have speculated on this line and declared that it's a Chekhov's gun, or setup with no payoff, but I believe it's much more simple than that. It looks to me like he just wants to throw Jon off. Tyrian is deranged, but there are parts of his brain that still retain some sense of higher thought. Being outnumbered is always bad, even when you outclass your enemies. Exceptional fighters can be taken down by a group of mediocre ones, so it makes sense to tilt the odds a bit in your favor. Jean is the weak link here, so making him nervous would put him even further in the hole, allowing him to be more easily taken down and reducing this to a 1v3. You don't go after the strong opponent first. You go after the weak one to get them out of play.
What do you want?
My little flower, I'm here to whisk you away with me.
We're not going to let you do that.
Tyrian is clearly confident in his chances though, as he outright declares his objective to Team Ranger. I always felt like giving this group a full-on name was a bit odd. I mean, really, how often do we see full teams outside of the academies? Not frequently, that's for certain, but this gives his hand away. Now they know what he's after, and will also know that he can't risk killing RWBY, as his goal is to capture her, not kill her. This means that they now know that RWBY is the VIP, and a strategy that could have been employed would be to have RWBY simply bail via her semblance. That means that Tyrian would need to give chase, as staying to dispose of the rest of Team Juniper would give someone with enhanced speed even more time to make distance that he may not be able to make up for. Even if RWBY doesn't disengage, her semblance alone should give her incredible mobility in this open space, which she doesn't make use of.
John!
Tyrian then does something rather strange. He dashes behind Jean at superhuman speed. Now, we know that this is not his semblance. That is the ability to attack through aura shields as though they weren't there. So that means that this is something else entirely. So it stands to reason that if this is not a semblance, then super speed should be achievable by any sufficiently trained individual. But this is almost never used. Not only that, but it detracts from characters like RWBY or Harriet, whose semblances are supposed to be increased speed. But Ren somehow calls out to Jean, seeing this happening. Did Tyrian really just slow down, or can Ren perceive this more readily than the others? Not only that, but somehow RWBY and Nora have warped backwards quite some distance. Jean was just in front of them a moment ago. Ren opens fire at Tyrian, and some of these shots even strike Jean's shield. Don't send Ren in to deal with a hostage situation. Some do strike Tyrian as well, but have no observable effect. Tyrian then opts to perform ballet on Jean's shield, and Ren seems to miss entirely, as nothing appears to happen as he opens fire once more. RWBY runs forward, but does nothing to the static Tyrian before being kicked away. Really, he's just spinning on the spot. You could hardly ask for a better opportunity to hit him. Jean then delivers a wild swing, but he doesn't follow it up with any subsequent attacks, and thus eats a pair of kicks and is knocked away. Never throw just one attack unless it's to gauge how your opponent will respond. Each one should set up another, else you give your enemy time to attack you instead. RWBY then elects to shoot at Nora with lightning dust rounds. Now, there's a bit of an issue here. Firstly, Nora is not immune to electricity-based damage. She may be resistant, but that isn't the same thing as being invulnerable to it. That will still hurt her. Secondly, there's still the fact that she was shot. That will also damage her aura, and given that Crescent Rose is portrayed as powerful, that's a gamble taken with your friend's life. She was even thrown some distance away by the impact, showing that this did indeed have some oomph behind it. If her aura hadn't been up to the task of taking that damage, then RWBY could very well have killed Nora right here. Nora, however, has been powered up by the lightning dust and uses her amplified strength to strike at Tyrian, and given the dust kicked up, this is a much more powerful strike than what can normally be achieved. However, even this was stopped in its tracks by Tyrion's scorpion tail. Fun fact, scorpion tails are incredibly flexible. I didn't know that until a few years ago. I always thought they were more rigid, but this means that Tyrion's aura is strong enough to withstand an attack of this amplitude, as well as having the strength in this limb to stop it. Nora appears too shocked to react in time as she's kicked away. Given that she has always been shown to take down even multiple opponents with a single attack like this, she probably never considered that it could be countered. Again, never make such assumptions, or you can quickly find yourself outmatched. Tyrian then moves on RWBY again, knocking aside her weapon with his tail. Gaining control over your enemy's weapon is always a good idea. If it's out of position, then they can't attack or defend well. RWBY is put on the defensive, and Tyrian has switched for a moment to using a fighting tactic that I myself used, called the Runner. I know, whoever named it had a grudge against it. What you do is you stay just outside your opponent's reach, or just far enough away to where they can't strike you easily. You can then either wait until they get impatient and overextend to make your move, or if you see another opening, you can take it. Tyrian then delivers a blow strong enough to hurl RWBY away before engaging Ren. These four are not doing a good job of capitalizing on their numbers advantage, are they? Ren overextends and is kicked in the spine for his carelessness. Jean evades Tyrion's stinger, but does nothing offensively and is kicked away as well. Nora attacks once, but this is stuffed too before Ren attempts to re-engage, though he backs off when things don't go his way. RWBY is now just standing there, and willingly eats a pair of hooks before being sent flying by a tail attack. And Tyrian, once again, uses this strange speed ability to sprint to where she will land, before delivering a spinning kick to her abdomen. RWBY also lost Crescent Rose here. You have got to work on your grip. Still, that kick's strength would be magnified by the fact that not only does it contain the force that Tyrian put behind it, but also RWBY's momentum coming to an abrupt halt before being sent back the other way. I believe that the average human only has to fall a short way before they inflict 1,000 pounds of force on themselves, so this clearly would have packed a punch. Tyrian then menaces RWBY, and we get a clear shot of Nora and Ren doing precisely nothing. Excuse me? This shot seems to imply that Ren was wounded or injured, but we have seen no evidence of that, and Nora is just gawking like an imbecile. Meanwhile, Jean has just decided to accept this, I suppose.
Oh God! I thought we died together! We died together! How about yourself?
Tyrian then attempts to sting RWBY, but this attack is blocked by the timely arrival of Qrow. Problem though, Tyrion's venom is lethal, and Qrow himself was almost killed by a glancing attack. Tyrian is supposed to capture RWBY, not kill her. He almost deliberately failed his mission right here.
As I live and breathe, Qrow Bronwyn.
So after some posing for no discernible reason, Qrow and Tyrian have a bit of an introduction. Tyrian already knows who Qrow is, but it doesn't seem like this holds true the other way around though. It stands to reason that Qrow, the only member of Team Stark that didn't come up short in one way or another, would be known by Salem, especially after he interrupted Cinder's attack on Amber. Qrow either doesn't know about Tyrion's history, or it simply slipped his mind. Tyrian lunges at Qrow, who deflects the incoming strike, as well as the subsequent one. If he hadn't overswung, he could have attacked Tyrian here, as the latter is completely exposed. As it is, it takes him too long to retaliate, and this gives Tyrian the chance to attack again, though Qrow effectively dodges. Tyrian then has to evade, and Qrow makes him pay for his careless leaping attack by knocking him away. Qrow completely whiffs his swing here. Tyrian was completely stationary, but he somehow missed. Tyrian also passes up on the opportunity to attack a vulnerable Qrow, as his back is exposed. Yes, he does position his blade in front of his back, but that is still a weak position. The two have an exchange, and Tyrian again employs the runner strategy. You see, the two have drastically different weapons here. Qrow's is quite large, while Tyrion's weapons are much smaller. If Qrow can keep Tyrian at range, then he has the advantage. But if Tyrian can get inside Qrow's effective range, then that flips the other way around. Qrow then does a series of blocks with his weapon in a reverse grip, which is ineffective, as that means that he has to move his arm farther to put his weapon in a position to block. He then follows this with a spinning attack, which is quite easy to see coming. Tyrian opts to block this instead of deflecting though, and uses both weapons to do so. Again, when you have two, parry with one while striking with the other. Tyrian decides to use his weapon's ranged attacks though, but this would do nothing as the barrels can't face Qrow from this angle. He then disengages, continuing to fire at Qrow, though these projectiles are either deflected or miss outright, though we do get a clear shot of the others doing nothing. Engaging in melee might get in Qrow's way more than anything else, but attacking from range would not. This means that Jean should stay back, and Nora's area of effect explosives shouldn't be used, but RWBY and Ren have no reason not to open fire now that there is some distance between the two fighters.
Don't come closer.
After several seconds, Ren and Nora begin to move in, now with seemingly no injury that was displayed prior. Also, you'd think that RWBY would be the first one to make a move, given that Qrow is her uncle and all. Their attacks are evaded, and the two eat more kicks for their trouble. Tyrian attempts to assail them again, but Qrow comes between them and tells the youths to stay back. While I don't like the pushing against each other these two are doing with their weapons, as that does nothing, I do like how Qrow is using his offhand to press on the flat of his blade for added leverage.
Fine!
RWBY, however, decides to engage in a bit of malicious compliance. She manages to get up onto the roof of one of the buildings, looking to take a shot at Tyrian. However, this could be difficult with your target in melee distance of an ally. Positioning can change rapidly, and you don't want to blast your uncle. The bout continues between Qrow and Tyrian though, and the two overswing here, not looking particularly adept on either side. Then follow up with some wild swings from Tyrion's kick and Qrow's slash. Tyrian displays maneuvers that would be impossible with conventional physics, and are even a stretch for some of the displays seen in this show, but we do see Qrow return fire from his own weapon. Tyrian does manage to get a hold of Qrow's arm though, and disarms him. What was this display? RWBY, your target was stationary, and you still missed. You have hit more difficult shots before, so how did this happen? Tyrian can even block these shots without looking at her. But then somehow fails to do anything other than stand there as Qrow strikes him repeatedly. What? Why are you allowing your opponent to calmly as can be retrieve his weapon? This is when you need to press the attack. Qrow, however, does manage to catch his foe off guard by altering the configuration of his weapon. Crescent Rose may be more visually appealing, but Harbinger has greater functionality. The two duel atop a roof, and we see Qrow's semblance in action, though at the time we don't yet know it. He causes bad luck around himself, though it is indiscriminate. Still, this has always thrown me off, because if bad luck happens to one participant in a fight, then it was good luck for the other one. It's about perspective.
What is
luck?
baby, don't hurt me.
The two eventually break out of the dilapidated building, and RWBY jumps in the fight as well, though unfortunately she attacks from the same direction as Qrow, allowing Tyrian to counter both of them more easily than he otherwise would. Attack from different directions so that he can't see both of you. Both of you also have to worry about him getting within your weapon's reach, so attacking from opposite sides would mean that gaining the advantage on one would likely expose him to the other.
RWBY, what did I say?
Qrow is momentarily knocked aside, and RWBY is nearly overwhelmed in short order before he saves her again. Honestly, her heart's in the right place, but in a situation like this, you'd only be getting in the way. RWBY cannot go toe-to-toe with Tyrian, and this just gives him an easy target, which Qrow must put himself at a disadvantage to protect. Emotion and logic are two concepts that must be married. One without the other will result in disaster sooner or later. Tyrian then kicks RWBY back, and Qrow's semblance comes into play here, with one of the rafters collapsing towards her. Her uncle swiftly steps in to save her, though the two pose instead of recalling that there is an insane arthropod nearby that wants to do them harm. And so Qrow pays for this by taking a grazing wound from Tyrion's stinger. This will later be shown to still be potent enough to put him out of commission for some time, even from such a minor dose. But RWBY, in a surprising display of actually being willing to harm a villain, something that's not seen all too much in media such as this, severs the tip of Tyrion's tail, as he too failed to take his situation into account. Tyrion then flees the scene, and they all just let him go. Qrow is still reeling, so it makes sense that he didn't do anything, and Jean only has a melee weapon. But RWBY, Nora, and Ren could all open fire right now and end him. Given that he was able to be dismembered, then his aura must be broken, and thus he will take the full damage from attacks. They could have ended him right now as he fled, but unfortunately they did no such thing, and thus Tyrion lives to fight another day. And that concludes this fight. If Tyrion hadn't played with his food so much, he could have easily accomplished his goal. It took quite some time for Qrow to show up, so he had plenty of opportunity to eliminate Team Juniper. RWBY didn't really use her semblance, which would have been a great way to counter Tyrion. And the posing instead of fighting is how Qrow got wounded at all. But what did you think of this fight? An agent of Salem squaring off against a fully fledged huntsman and trouncing the students. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like on this video if you're so inclined, and subscribe to see more. I would like to thank you for watching, and may you all have a weapon in each hand.